Karen pulled herself together. "Jessica, call an ambulance quickly. You're overreacting. This is what kids do, you know. Even if they collapse a bit, they'll be fine." Upon returning home, Karen was foaming at the mouth and collapsed. Even when I called out to her, Karen didn't respond. With her eyes rolled back, it seemed like an emergency. While calling for an ambulance for Karen, who was unresponsive, Jessica was absorbed in the TV. Then the emergency medical team arrived promptly and took Karen away. "Please let her be okay," I prayed while riding in the ambulance. As a mother, I can't forgive such an attitude. Although Jessica hasn't been very willing to take care of Karen before this time it's too much. Why did I leave Jessica and Karen alone at home? I should have quit my job sooner and taken care of Karen. If I had done that, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Regrets won't change what has already happened. At the same time, anger towards Jessica welled up within me. My name is Janet, a 50-year-old woman. I live with my eldest son's family and my granddaughter. After losing my beloved husband, my eldest son, William, proposed living together. After my husband passed away, when times get tough, we help each other out. It must be hard for Mom to live alone in this big house. You can rely on us, my son William said. I was so happy that tears welled up, even though I thought I had stopped crying. My son's wife, Jessica, also thought positively about living together, so we started living together with my son's family. At that time, Jessica was pregnant. Because she was pregnant, Jessica seemed to be suffering from morning sickness, so I tried my best to repay the favor of living together by working even harder on housework. When Jessica seemed to be in pain, I used my experience to make dishes that were easy to eat, even during morning sickness. You're such a caring and kind person. It feels like you're completely free from bullying your daughter-in-law. When I was told that, I felt proud. Jessica had become a full member of our family, and the baby in Jessica's belly was also a part of our family. Several months later, Jessica safely gave birth to a healthy baby girl. The granddaughter was named Karen. Even during her hospital stay, I visited her many times. She was so cute that I couldn't help but look forward to the time we could live together. Raising children is tough. That's what my experience has taught me. That's why I actively helped Jessica with childcare, instead of leaving it all to her. During childcare, there were often when I lacked sleep due to the baby crying at night, so I sometimes took care of Karen instead of Jessica. Jessica has a deep sleeping constitution, so once she falls asleep, she won't wake up no matter how much Karen cries. As a result, I sometimes felt physically tired during the day when I went to work, but for the sake of my family, it didn't matter. Although I received many criticisms for my mistakes at work, I still tried my best while considering my family. During the day when I was away from home due to work, Jessica, a full-time housewife, took care of Karen. However, Jessica seemed reluctant to take care of Karen, whether it was due to fatigue from childbirth or other reasons. Although I didn't pay much attention to it because I thought women could be emotionally unstable after childbirth, I still felt sorry for Karen. Aren't you lonely because Mommy doesn't play with you much? One day while reading a picture book to Karen, I asked her. Karen tilted her head, pondering my question with a thoughtful expression. Feeling like I had asked a difficult question, I waited anxiously for her response. Then Karen smiled and answered, "I'm not lonely because I have Grandma. Thank you, Grandma, for always being there." With those words, Karen hugged me tightly with her little hands. Her brave figure brought tears to my eyes, and I couldn't help but shed tears. She's truly courageous and such a good child. But deep down, she must want her mother's attention. That's just how young children are. The loneliness of not receiving attention from one's mother must be something I can't fully comprehend. While I understand Jessica's actions to some extent, I couldn't fully accept them. Despite Karen feeling so lonely, I've never blamed Jessica. Since she's always well-behaved, a good child, waiting for the day when Jessica will pay attention to her, I wish Jessica would spare some time for Karen, even just a little. I want them to have parent-child bonding time somehow. Gradually, I began to think that way. Jessica, how about going on a picnic this weekend? William also unexpectedly has a day off from work. According to the weather forecast, it looks like it'll be clear skies. I know a nice place, so why don't we go as a family? One night, after putting Karen to bed, I spoke to Jessica while relaxing in the living room. When I proposed the picnic idea, William agreed, saying, "That sounds good. All that was left was for Jessica to say she wanted to go. However, when I mentioned it to Jessica, she made a displeased face and said, "Huh? Isn't William's day off coinciding with a holiday? I don't like going to crowded places on holidays. Everywhere is full of families, and it's not enjoyable for Karen at all. Isn't it more meaningful to stay home and relax?" I frowned at Jessica's words. Certainly, leisure facilities around here tend to be crowded with families on holidays, and the roads get quite congested. But if I were to accept Jessica's words like this, Jessica and Karen would never understand each other. That would not be good. Don't say that. I'll help take care of Karen too, you know. What's she feeling? Lonely because you aren't giving your attention to her. I understand you're feeling unsettled, but please bear with it a little and create some parent-child time. I couldn't back down now and desperately insisted. Normally, I would have ended the conversation with Jessica just because she seemed a little reluctant, but this time I couldn't bring myself to do it. Karen's lonely expression wouldn't leave my mind. If I left things as they were, Karen would continue to feel lonely. I felt I couldn't let that happen. But no matter how much I appealed to her, Jessica wouldn't understand my point of view. In the end, William, Karen, and I went on the picnic together. Although Karen seemed happy to spend time with William, who is usually busy with work, she seemed to wonder about Jessica's absence. "Does Mommy hate me?" Karen murmured sleepily on the way home one day. William, who was driving, tilted his head in confusion, saying, "Huh?" Karen's faint voice resonated in my chest, and I hugged her tightly. "That's not true. Mommy also cares about you very much." I knew it was just words of comfort. Still, I didn't want her to spend her days ahead thinking she was disliked. That's why I thought so from the bottom of my heart. In my arms, Karen fell asleep soundly. William took this matter seriously and decided to talk to Jessica about it, but Jessica's attitude remained unchanged. She continued to be cold towards Karen, refusing to act like a mother. I began to feel increasingly frustrated with Jessica. After all, Karen is supposed to be Jessica's only daughter, yet why could she treat us so terribly? I couldn't understand Jessica's feelings at all, and naturally I began to distance myself from her. Still, I had no choice but to go to work during the day, so reluctantly I left Jessica and Karen alone together. Karen must be feeling so lonely during the day. Just thinking about it made my heart ache terribly. I started to make an effort to finish work early so I could see Karen as soon as possible. On that day too, I finished work a little early and headed home. But when I opened the front door, I noticed something was wrong. Normally, when I opened the front door and called out, "I'm home," Karen would come running to me, shouting, "Grandma!" But today, that didn't happen. Something must have happened to Karen. Instantly, panic surged within me, and I hurried into the living room. Jessica seemed oblivious to the situation, relaxing and watching TV. "Jessica, don't you know where Karen is?" Jessica, absorbed in the TV, ignored my question. I have no choice but to look around and find Karen by myself. Then Karen was lying by the kitchen, foaming at the mouth and wide-eyed. "Karen, stay with me! Jessica, call an ambulance quickly! Shake Karen and talk to her!" Perhaps sensing from the tone of my voice that something unusual was happening, Jessica turned her head slightly towards me, but immediately turned her gaze back to the TV again. "Don't exaggerate. She'll be fine even if she's a bit down." After saying that, Jessica does nothing. I had no choice but to call an ambulance myself, and the emergency services arrived a few minutes later. I will also ride in the ambulance to explain the situation. Jessica was muttering, "I think you're exaggerating," during the whole thing, and I was getting angry. Then, I went with Karen to a large hospital in the city. Soon, Karen was to receive treatment, and I was waiting in the waiting room, praying for her safety. God, please help Karen. While praying so sincerely, the lamp in the room where Karen was being treated goes out, and a doctor comes out of it. "Doctor, how's Karen?" When I ran up to him and asked him this, the doctor shook his head emphatically. The sense of hopelessness that came over him made it impossible for me to stand, and I collapsed on the spot. According to the doctor, Karen swallowed a foreign object and was left for several hours. The doctor said that she must have suffered a lot because she had swallowed something that should not normally be swallowed by people. I can't believe that. I was in such pain and no one helped me. My heart aches for Karen, and at the same time I felt an unspeakable anger towards Jessica, who was in the same house but was oblivious to Karen's suffering and was just watching TV. Ah, here you are. Welcome back. How was it? It was nothing, right? You take too much care of every little thing. When she returns home, Jessica, who was watching television, calls out to her. I dared not contact Jessica when she was in hospital, so she knew nothing about the situation. Jessica was confronted with the truth. Karen died. She swallowed something. The doctors said that if we had dealt with it earlier, she might have gotten to her in time. At my words, Jessica says, "What?" She raised her voice. When Jessica found out that Karen was bubbling over at the time, she laughed and said she was exaggerating and didn't take it seriously. As a result, Karen had to lose her life. She was a mother, but she never tried to behave in any motherly way. When I'm angry with Jessica for her behavior, Jessica shouts at me, "Don't lie to me. You want to scare me so badly. You have been like that for a long time. Do you know what they call that? It's called wife snoring. I'm living with you and doing it for her, but that's no way to talk to her, is it? You're being too brazen for having me live with you." Even if you say that it is Jessica who is at fault, who is not fulfilling any of her duties as a mother, I never once forced Jessica to do housework, no matter how sloppy she was. On the contrary, Jessica has not done any child rearing, forcing me to take care of all of Karen's nighttime crying. I don't have to tell you that parenting is stressful because I've been there. But to live in the world, you have to work a little harder, even if you don't want to. But Jessica has lived her life so far by escaping from that bit of hard work. That is not something that should be allowed to happen. You've been too lenient before. You've left everything to me, saying I'll manage and that everything will be fine. Don't you know how lonely Karen has been? I told you many times that I wanted you to look after Karen, didn't I? Karen didn't get to experience her mother's love up until just before she died. Don't you feel sorry for her? Are you lonely? When asked, Karen laughed soundly and said, "I don't mind because Grandma is here." Behind the expression on her face, she was aware of the loneliness she felt at not being cared for by her mother. I was aware of it. I was trying to do something about it, but in the end I couldn't do anything about it. Karen has always been lonely. She wanted to be left alone with her mother, Jessica. Nevertheless, they have worked hard and tried not to worry about the adults around them. When I think of Karen's last days like that, I can't help but feel pain in my heart. Are you saying it's all my fault? You know how stressful childcare can be, don't you? What if I get sick because of the stress? It's obvious which is more important, the newborn child or me. In general, I didn't want to have a child because of this. William was overjoyed when he found out that we were going to have a child, but he was always at work during the day and wouldn't take over child rearing for me. In the end, there was no one on my side. She gets hysterical, and Jessica throws a figurine that was left in the area. I rushed to avoid it, but it snagged me on my cheek, and blood came out. This case was Jessica's fault. If Jessica had not been so preoccupied with TV and had at least looked after Karen properly during the day when I was at, it would have been all over. It is as if Jessica's words are accusing me. On top of that, she refuses to admit her guilt and, on the contrary, makes excuses. I am fed up with her attitude, as an adult and as a mother, which is too irresponsible. If you had done better, Karen wouldn't have suffered like that. Why can't you understand such a simple thing? If Jessica had looked after Karen properly at that time, just until I came back, Karen might still be here now. What you did is that serious. Why can't you even understand that? Jessica says only too many irresponsible words. Why can't you understand my point? This incident was caused by Jessica's failure to look after Karen. So why is she trying to get away with what she has done? Our argument continued until late into the night. No matter how much I blamed Jessica, she always said, "It's not my fault, it's everyone else's fault." And there was no sign of remorse. It was unforgivable, not just as a mother-in-law, but as a person. They argued for so long that they lost track of time. In the meantime, William's somber voice can be heard saying, "I'm home." William left work early after hearing from me and went to check on Karen. Then he had to listen to the doctor's explanation, which is why he got home at this time. Seeing us arguing as soon as we entered the living room, William said, "What's wrong? If you had behaved properly, none of this would have happened. If you wanted to take good care of Karen, why didn't you just quit your job? It's because you're working that Karen got into this mess. It's all your fault. Don't blame others." I regret now that I have been away from home because of my work. If I had quit my job and looked after Karen when she realized that Jessica was not looking after her at all, this would probably not have happened. I was also frankly dismayed at myself for trusting Jessica too much. But that is not the same as this because you were at home as her mother. No matter how much you don't act like a mother in front of us, you know that you're the only one who can look after Karen when we're not around. If that's the case, you would normally think that she would be looking after Karen, wouldn't you? After all, you are her mother. I can understand if they don't want the stress of childcare and want me to help look after them or something like that. But what Jessica is doing is throwing a whole lot of money at it. She is a mother but does not raise any children and leaves everything to me. William played with Karen to his heart's content on his days off as he was away from home for work most of the time. However, Jessica was always able to be with Karen, but she did not behave in any motherly way. That is unacceptable by any stretch of the imagination. So you're saying it's my fault? That's a false accusation. It's Karen's fault for swallowing that strange thing. If Karen hadn't swallowed that strange thing, none of this would have happened. Just because she's a child, she can't even make that kind of decision. And she deserved all of this, didn't she? Jessica's words made me feel as if I had been doused with cold water. Is it Karen's fault? What do you think would lead you to such a conclusion? Children are fallible. It is our responsibility as adults to guide such children correctly. Karen is only 3 years old and cannot possibly be able to judge what is acceptable and what is not to be swallowed. Such a place should have been looked after properly by Jessica, an adult who was there. No matter how much we confronted her with reality and blamed her, Jessica only evaded responsibility. It's not my fault. It's your fault for not seeing it properly. If anything, it's Karen's fault for not being able to judge properly. That's all. They do not reflect on their actions at all, nor do they feel remorse. No matter how much she talked to Jessica like that, it may have been futile, but this is not how Karen is rewarded. It is painful to think of that child who was not exposed to her mother's love until the end of her life. Tears blur her vision, and she is at a loss for words. In the midst of all this, enough was heard. It was uttered by William. If I just shut up and listen, then what? Is it my mother's fault? Is it Karen's fault for not judging properly? Don't be silly. She's a human being who can't even fulfill her responsibilities as an adult and a mother. I thought you might have felt a little remorse, but you don't even show any signs of remorse. I didn't think you were that kind of person. Divorce. Divorce. Now that Karen is gone, there's no reason for us to be a family with you. On the spur of the moment, William says no to the divorce. At these words, Jessica says, "Are you serious?" She shouts at him. The tone of her voice is oozing with a sense that she wants it to be a lie. Please, please, William, don't say that. I'm sorry about Karen. I should have looked at her more, but what's done is done, right? She's not coming back. Let's have another baby. We won't fail at parenting this time. I'll do my best to make sure we have a happy family. I am offended by the way they talk about children as if they could be replaced. Even if they have children in the future, Karen will never come back. She is nowhere to be found. I'm sorry, but I can't. You have to give up. Pack up your stuff and leave the house tomorrow. If you're still at home when I get back tomorrow, I'll get you a lawyer. You don't want to end up paying a hefty fee, do you? When William said this, Jessica's face turned pale, and she nodded her head. William chuckled in satisfaction at this and said to me, "Let's call it a day." So I went back to my room. Meanwhile, Jessica sat in the living room, not moving a twitch. The next day, Jessica was gone as we spoke. But what Jessica did is not something that can be forgiven, for William felt the same way. He then consulted his lawyer on various matters and decided to open a divorce settlement. Combined with my testimony and Karen's case, the court ruled that Jessica was liable, and William claimed a large amount of alimony. Although she cannot pay it herself, Jessica cries and begs for forgiveness, but such words do not reach William. Jessica then asked her parents for help, but they were very angry with Karen, so she paid them off at their doorstep and is now living alone in the world, owing a large amount of debt to pay the alimony. When I think of Karen, I can't help but feel pain in my heart, even now. I always visited Karen's grave on the monthly anniversary of her death, alone. Do not feel lonely. When I put my hands together, I remember that voice innocently calling me Grandma. I'm sure we will have lots of happy memories in the future. Why couldn't I have been there for Karen? No matter how much she regrets it, Karen will never come back to this place. I will never forget Karen, my one and only precious granddaughter. Lovely, healthy, yet intelligent Karen. I hope she is now living happily in heaven. I wonder if I also will be able to meet Karen when I finish my life. I want to live the rest of my life peacefully so that I can be a grandmother who will not be ashamed when we meet face to face. Let's conclude our story. The weight of Karen's absence pressed heavily on Janet. The house, once filled with the echoes of her granddaughter's laughter, now stood shrouded in a deafening silence. William, consumed by grief and anger, buried himself in his work, seeking solace in the numbing routine. Janet, however, found no such escape. The guilt gnawed at her, whispering insidious doubts. If only I had stayed home, if only I hadn't trusted Jessica so blindly. If only. The blame she heaped upon herself was a heavy burden, but it paled in comparison to the emptiness that now defined her days. She found solace only in tending Karen's grave, whispering stories, and sharing memories with the silent headstone. There, amidst the blooming flowers and the gentle rustling of leaves, she felt a semblance of peace, a fragile connection to the granddaughter she so dearly missed. One day, as she knelt at the grave, a wave of exhaustion washed over her. She closed her eyes, and in the quiet stillness she heard a familiar voice. "Don't be sad, Grandma. I'm happy." It was Karen's voice, soft and filled with a childlike innocence. Janet's eyes flew open, but there was no one there. Had it been her imagination, a desperate yearning for a voice that could no longer be heard? Or was it something more? A whisper from beyond, a reassurance from a soul at peace? She didn't have an answer, but a sense of calm settled within her. The guilt that had tormented her began to recede, replaced by a quiet acceptance. She realized that blaming herself wouldn't bring Karen back. What remained was the love, the memories, and the responsibility to carry Karen's spirit within her heart. From that day forward, Janet's grief took on a new dimension. It was still a profound sadness, an ache that would never fully disappear. But it was also a source of strength, a reminder to cherish life and to hold dear the love that had touched her so deeply. She would continue to visit Karen's grave, but now she would do so with a lighter heart, sharing stories and laughter, knowing that somewhere beyond the veil of sorrow, her precious granddaughter was listening, smiling, and finally, at peace. After experiencing the full journey of our story, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How did the story resonate with you? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay blessed. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.